When we speak of right and wrong, are we just naming preferences or pointing to something real, something deeper than instinct or convenience? In this chapter, Lewis challenges us to look again at the strange, persistent feeling that there's a way we ought to live, even when we fall short. What if morality isn't just a social contract, but a real law, whispering to us of a higher truth? In this reflection on human morality, the author revisits two peculiar traits of humankind. First, people are haunted by a sense of how they ought to behave, often called fairness, decency, or morality. Second, they consistently fail to meet these moral standards. While some may see this as ordinary, the author argues it's deeply significant. Unlike a tree or a rock, which simply exist as they are and follow the laws of nature without judgment, human beings experience an inner standard that tells them what ought to be, regardless of what is. When we say a stone obeys gravity, we merely describe what stones always do. But when we talk about moral law, we refer not to what humans always do, but what they should do, even when they don't. This suggests that human morality isn't just another natural instinct, like hunger or fear. Instincts may prompt us toward action, but morality is something else entirely. It's the quiet voice telling us when to act against our instincts and why. The author challenges the notion that moral disapproval is just personal inconvenience. For example, both a man who takes someone's train seat by force and one who fairly occupies it first may cause inconvenience. But moral judgment falls only on the unfair one. Similarly, in wartime, a traitor may serve a practical benefit to an enemy side, but is still seen as vile. These examples suggest that morality isn't just about usefulness or convenience. He then tackles the argument that moral behavior benefits society, and that's why humans evolved to value it. While cooperation is certainly crucial to societal survival, this explanation doesn't fully address why we feel we ought to behave morally, even when it doesn't serve personal or societal benefit. If someone asks why they should be unselfish, and the reply is because it's good for society, one can still question why they should care about society at all. This circular reasoning, saying you should be unselfish because it's right to be unselfish, proves insufficient. What emerges is a sense that morality is a real universal law, not invented, not chosen for convenience, but discovered, like a compass pointing beyond ourselves. It holds us to a higher standard, one we all recognize, even if we often fail to live up to it. The author concludes that this moral law is distinct from natural laws. Whereas gravity describes what matter does, the moral law tells humans what they ought to do, even when they don't want to. It does not guarantee behavior, but it presses on every conscience as something deeper and truer than mere societal expectations. Before diving into the complexities of human behavior, Lewis pauses to lay bare a truth that is both unsettling and strangely comforting. In a world where so much is uncertain, he points to something within us that seems to persist, regardless of culture, circumstance, or convenience. And in one clear, deliberate sentence, he writes, "The law of human nature tells you what human beings ought to do and do not." This single line carries the weight of centuries of moral thought. It doesn't come wrapped in grand language or philosophical jargon, but in the simplicity of an observation that, once heard, cannot be forgotten. It speaks to the inner contradiction we live with daily, the knowledge of what is right and our frequent failure to live by it. This statement is the very heart of Lewis's argument. It marks a clear distinction between descriptive laws, like gravity, and prescriptive laws, like morality. Gravity describes what stones do, but the moral law describes what humans ought to do, even when they fail to do it. This oughtness cannot be explained away by instinct or utility. It points to a truth that judges our actions from beyond ourselves. And the curious part, we recognize it, even when we disobey it, We don't deny it. We make excuses. We justify. Because deep down, we know we fell short of something real, not just someone else's opinion, but a standard that feels unshakably true. The moral law does not scream at us. It does not force compliance. Instead, it quietly endures. It follows us from childhood into old age. It reminds us, sometimes softly and sometimes with painful clarity, that we are capable of both greatness and failure. It is not a product of our culture or education, because it often demands things that go against both. It is not simply a tool for social harmony, because it calls us to truth even when the truth costs us. What Lewis reveals here is not a system of rules, but an invitation to remember who we are beneath the noise of survival and ambition. It's an awakening to the possibility that being human means being accountable to something higher than impulse or gain. And perhaps, most importantly, this reminder doesn't come to shame us, but to call us home. Because if there is a law written on the heart, then there must be a purpose for the heart to follow. Lewis builds a careful argument, guiding the reader through common assumptions about morality. Some people claim that our sense of right and wrong is nothing more than a practical tool, a social invention meant to help human beings live together in harmony. And in many ways, this view is understandable. After all, fairness and cooperation do lead to safer, more stable communities. But then comes the quote, "You are saying what is true, but you are not getting any further." This quiet sentence, placed like a stone in still water, begins to ripple outward. It's not a dismissal, it's a gentle challenge. Lewis isn't saying that the observation is false, he's saying that it doesn't go deep enough. That is the heart of this chapter. What he uncovers here is the subtle but powerful difference between description and explanation. To say we are unselfish because it helps society is like saying we play football to score goals. But scoring goals is the act of playing the game. It doesn't explain why the game exists. Similarly, to say we act morally because it helps the group is to confuse the function of morality with its foundation. It loops the conversation back to itself without offering any deeper insight. This distinction matters. When people do the right thing, even when it brings no personal benefit, sometimes even at great cost, there's something else at work. Think of someone who returns a wallet with cash inside, though no one would have known, or someone who tells the truth when lying would have saved face. These are not just useful actions, they carry a weight, a significance that cannot be fully captured by the language of utility. And this is where Lewis's brilliance lies. He invites the reader to reflect not only on behavior, but on the source of the inner voice that calls for honesty, for justice, for compassion. Why does a person feel shame when they fail to live up to a standard that brings them no gain? Why do we admire sacrifice even when it seems foolish from a survival standpoint? By saying, "You are not getting any further," Lewis gently exposes the limits of functional explanations. Yes, fairness works. Yes, cooperation benefits us. But that doesn't answer the deeper question. Why do we feel we must be fair even when it hurts? That's the point where moral law begins to look like more than a human invention. It begins to look like something discovered, not designed, something real, pressing on us, even when inconvenient. In this small, quiet line, Lewis opens the door to a deeper kind of inquiry, not about how morality helps us, but about what morality means about us. The reader is left with a subtle but lasting impression. There may be more to our conscience than evolution, more to goodness than group survival. There may be a truth, real, invisible, and persistent, that calls to us from beyond the visible facts of life. One of the most compelling moments in Lewis's moral vision emerges in his quiet but profound declaration. This rule of right and wrong must somehow or other be a real thing, a thing that is really there, not made up by ourselves. This statement encapsulates the heart of Lewis's belief that morality is not a human invention or a cultural agreement. but a reality that exists beyond us and yet speaks within us. It is not a product of our preferences or upbringing, but a truth we stumble upon, often uninvited, especially when we are confronted with choices that test our character. Unlike the physical laws of nature that describe what things always do, this moral law tells us what we ought to do, even when we don't. Lewis is not claiming this law is visible like a mountain or measurable like gravity. He does not reduce it to something we can capture in a formula. Instead, he invites us to recognize that this law is woven into the very fabric of human conscience. It presses on us, whispers to us in moments of silence, and at times accuses us with startling clarity. We feel it when we wrong someone, when we betray a friend, or when we witness cruelty and injustice. And what is striking, Lewis notes, is that we do not merely dislike these things. We know deep down that they are wrong. This conviction does not arise from convenience or social advantage. Often, what is right costs us. It means telling the truth when it would be easier to lie. It means keeping promises, staying loyal, choosing fairness over gain. The presence of such a law, one that challenges self-interest and personal comfort, points to something more than evolutionary survival or psychological conditioning. It suggests a design, a deeper order beneath the noise of human behavior. Lewis's quote gently invites humility. If there exists a law of right and wrong that none of us created, and yet all of us recognize, then perhaps morality is not ours to define, but to discover. And if that is true, we are no longer the authors of our own moral code. We are its students. We are not inventors, but recipients of a wisdom that predates us and guides us towards something greater. In a culture where values are increasingly described as subjective, Lewis dares to propose that some truths are not relative. Even when people disagree on specifics, there is a shared human awareness that some things are universally unjust. This persistent awareness hints that morality is not just a cultural echo, it may be a divine voice. And so Lewis leaves us with more than a philosophical assertion. He offers a quiet nudge toward wonder. What if the moral law is not only real, but sacred? What if it is not just an ethical guideline, but the first trace of a higher presence? One that calls us to live not for ourselves alone, but in harmony with a purpose greater than our own? So we end not with a conclusion, but with an invitation. To look at morality not as a custom or convenience, but as a clue that we were meant for more than mere survival. That something greater is calling us to live better, not because it benefits us, but because it is right. If this chapter stirred something in you, don't stop here. The next chapter explores what lies behind the moral law and asks the question, could it point to a mind behind the universe? Subscribe to follow this journey and leave a comment. Do you believe morality is real or just a story we tell ourselves? Let's talk about it.